apparently, there's a whole scale there, depending on who the vendor is. Because some of them were not interested in control and automation. Or their definition of what that meant was very limited. Okay, so we do the best we can based on what we can do with the device. And we have oodles and oodles now of drivers. And every month, every year, there's more and more people.
What about third-party drivers? How do you bring those into the?
Same way. Usually the third-party driver has the same way of adding it. We're gonna get into that.
We'll show how to do
Yeah.
that.
So, all right, so everybody have this in the hand. This is what happened. Did you pull, right, let me just, again, anecdotally, I bought my first Blu-ray player because I had built a theater in my home, converted a storage room to a theater. I was so excited. I wanted movies, right? I now have HDMI to a projector. Let me. I got a 7.1 clip subwoofer. I'm ready to rock. Well, I had nothing to play Blu-rays. So my wife and I are shopping, and we see a Blu-ray player, $89. And I say to her, sweetie, can I buy it? She goes, okay. So I bring it home. It's a Sony. I bring it home. I get the remote out. Some of you know that you've seen these Blu-ray remotes, right? There's like oodles and oodles and oodles of buttons here. So I pull it out of the box.
That's a big remote.
Yeah. It's got lots of buttons. And it even had a function button on it too, so I could hold the function and then do all this other stuff.
It's super remote.
Yeah. And I had no idea what any of those functions did anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and map this now. Well, obviously I first looked in our database. No such luck. What was cool is there was a close Sony number. So I started with that, right? So I bring this driver in, doesn't work. So what do? Yeah, so I use that particular driver, and I just go to the hex codes, and then I start pushing the corresponding button while pointing the remote at our controller. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so we're capturing the codes that way, and this is what we're going to do now with this TV remote. Now, did I need to capture all those codes?
Just because you want.
Just the ones you want.
Just the codes I wanted. What did I want? What experience did I want my family to have?
Power.
On and on.
Yeah, I wanted my family to be able to plop down on a comfortable chair, hit the 4 button, boom, have everything turn on, come up and make choices. When they got to the DVD, I needed the top menu, I needed transport controls, I needed to be able to turn on subtitles. I got a bunch of girls in my house, and they watch Jane Austen movies. I can't watch them without the subtitles. I cannot, right? I don't barely even want to watch them, but you know what these are, these like Pride and Prejudice British movies.
Yeah, can't understand them.
By the way, I saw a movie last night called, with Tom Cruise called John. What's
Jack
it?
Reacher?
Yeah, Jack Reacher.
Yeah.
I liked it. My wife didn't, but I did.
That's probably why.
It just had a lot of intrigue and, you know, badass that would go around and kick bad guys' butts.
And he ran, because he runs in all these movies.
He ran in it because he runs it all. Yeah. Then the girl was cute.
It's a good movie. Make it, but
Was it?
that was a whole series.
Oh,
Yeah, make it.
Well, anyway, back to this. So I gave them that functionality so that they could do what they normally intend to do from our remote. Class, you're doing it wrong if the other device remote is still required to be in the room. Does that make sense? What should only be sitting in the room? Should this? No.
We should have control for it.
Now, can you have a touchscreen in that room as well?
Yeah.
Or can they have their iPhone or their Android device as well? Yeah.
What's the point of having automation if you gotta still use the factory
That's
remote?
right, but it's so funny to me to see what that required. It only required me to use maybe 20 codes, 15 codes. I did not have to, the 400,000 that were available to me with the extra function key that gave me another 400,000, I didn't have to worry about capturing all that. I didn't know what any of that did anyway. Okay? You guys laugh because you think, well, Corey, you just don't know what those funny things do. All right, so how do we get into this? What do I do?
Drivers.
I've come into this situation and I want to map the code. We come over here to driver and we choose create new driver. Let's all do this together, okay? Step by step. So please choose create new driver. Again, we would recommend to start with an existing driver and just map out the codes. But in this particular example, we're not gonna do that, because I wanna show you the beginning. This list of proxies, what they call proxies, device types. This is a finite list. Now, it's true that you can start with one device type and make a different one. Like I could start with a cable box and end up with a gaming cube. Right? But you cannot go in and modify this list. You have to just choose what's here. We do have these stupid combo. We played with this over at Kim's house. It's hard. Okay. We're going to do a TV, so click on TV. And then say OK. Now, the manufacturer is Sony, right? The TV is the KDL BX, no, 22 BX 300, is that right?
Sure.
And then today is, I'm just, because I have a couple of these on here. What's the date today? The
12, 11, 23.
The 11th. So it's 12/11. So I'm just going to go like that. And then the driver creator is me. Put your initials in there. Now, if you're starting with an existing driver, it will not copy over that existing driver. It will make a new one based on that existing driver, if that makes sense. And some of you have been seeing when you pull drivers in, it gives you a created and modified date. Okay? So now we click next here. We're going to go sequentially through this, although you could just go straight to the button on the left. Are we doing IR or are we doing serial? We're going to do that TV's being controlled via infrared. Now, you also have this direct connect option for some devices where you can plug directly in. But in the case that you don't have that, like with these mouse emitters, you cannot keep that checked because it strips away some carrier signal and those emitters won't fire. So just be mindful that don't check that for this particular example.
Directly connected with the wire does not mean your IR button.
Yes. Okay? And then the serial. What happens if we're doing a serial driver? We got to fill out this baud rate, data bit, parity, flow control. What's all this mean?
That's the baseline for serial instructions.
Yeah, and this has to be accurate, right? Where do we get it?
From the manufacturer.
From the manufacturer. And typically you'll get the codes in either decimal, hexadecimal, or ASCII. The good news is this wizard can handle all three. That's cool. Okay? And there's instructions out on the web. Help files that exceed the composer help file that's here. I'll show you where those are, but on the dealer portal, there's a software link, and under software there's a documentation link. And there's extended documentation for all of this, so you can see examples of doing serial drivers and how to format, quote unquote, like, you know, when you're putting ASCII codes in, what you need to do. All of that's there. Again, great cure for insomnia, so if any of you have problems sleeping, may I recommend just opening one of those files, reading for about 10 minutes.
We'll be good to go.
That's nice sleeping back. Okay, so go IR here, and then click next. Okay, we're doing an infrared driver. Now, we come to the screen that starts talking about the device. A lot of this information we're going to get straight from the remote, if not all of that information, right? So look at the remote. You can start answering them. If we look at the remote, from an audio perspective, what can we do here?
Volume up and down.
Well, we can do volume up and down, so we don't have discrete volume control. None of the bass treble balance features. We have to go into a menu to get to here. But we do have a mute. It's just not a discrete mute, right? There's a muting button over to the left of the volume. And that's all we click on here.
What's the term discrete control refer to?
Separate.
Like if you hit the off or power command, it's got a separate power off versus power on.
Yeah.
Versus
Instead of
the-
top
So
one.
mute on, mute off.
Yeah, like that guy has discrete inputs representing A through E. A device that didn't, like this, would just have an input toggle that would move you from A to B to C to D to E.
Or like the power switch on this thing, it's got one button for power on and off, it's just using probably the same code.
Yeah. Okay? But, we'll go ahead and click next. Now it says, what about the TV properties? Do I have discrete input? What did we just say?
We don't know.
We don't. If you look at the remote, it just has an input toggle.
Not really.
If you have discrete input, typically the remote has the inputs called out on it. Right? You want to see the TV, boom. You want to see the DVR, boom. Right? okay? But we don't. And then down here, if you have a numeric pad on your remote, chances are good you could say you have discrete channel selection, right? And then with respect to volume, what would discrete volume be? You did a volume button followed by a numeric, right, setting, like volume 30 or volume 50. But we don't have that. We just have the plus and minus, the volume ramp. Okay? Now, you guys check the bottom one, but don't check the top. However, I'm going to, because I'm special. I'll show you why. I just did this in a minute. Then we click next. And then it says, well, how's power being managed? Are we going to assume this is always on? We do that with this projector. We have made it in our project an always-on device. How come? Well, because remember, how many times have I demoed to you in this class? Showing you music and partying the music and all that. Whenever I turn off the music, I don't want what to happen? I don't want that guy to power off,
It's a cycle.
right? So I've chosen assume the device is always on for that guy. Then when we leave the room, on both of our touch screens and on our remote, we have a custom button for the projector. I showed you this yesterday. And one of the commands is what?
Off.
Power off the projector.
So did you just take the existing driver and just change that? That's smart.
Yep.
But doesn't.
Again, in a demo type situation, I would hate that guy to continue the cycle. If you talk to bulb manufacturers, they tell you it's better to leave a projector on all day than to just turn that guy off.
So, but like the theaters I've done, when you switch inputs, oh, because that's still video endpoint.
Yeah.
So in this programming, when you tell it to go to music, it's, the Control4 automatically wants to tell it to turn off.
Anything, like say we had the cable playing, and I turned the
Yeah.
cable off,
It
that
powers
guy would
it off.
want to turn off, right? Now, if
If
I'm
you
just
didn't
switching
select-
between inputs, then he'll stay on.
Yeah, inputs.
But if I'm saying room off, which is my easy way of stopping whatever I was doing, I don't want him to room off.
Gotcha. So it turns on, its power cycles, whatever the video endpoint is, right?
Yes. Room off does, by default, if you have it chosen this way.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and it's asking, well, how? Do you use discrete codes to do that? Do you set a toggle? Right? The other thing you can do too, which is cool, we used to do this with these TVs, you could plug them into an outlet. A non-discrete device, what's the problem with those in an automation system?
They get out of sync.
They can get out of sync. You come back from vacation, the TV's been on the whole time, right? Why? Because some kid hit the power button on the TV instead of used the Control4 system, right? Well, to avoid that, you can plug into one of our switch outlets. Our switch outlet will sense the current. There's a learning mode that you put the outlet into, and then it will learn the current draw. And if it ramps at a certain amperage, you can have the outlet remember that, right? It learns it. So then it knows when that TV's on or off, and we send the toggle accordingly.
So in the programming, is that a program state for that, when sensing current?
What, can you do a when sensing current on the outlet now? You can say when on.
On what now?
So I was just introducing the outlet module as a way to
Current
get
sensor.
overcome non-discrete. And he asked the question, is the when sensing current available in program?
It is. The only thing that I've heard about it, when I was talking to the product manager that's over it, was that he wasn't sure the effectiveness of it because it hasn't been evaluated in like quite a few revisions. But I mean, I told him that I've made suggestions in class for things like, it's supposed to know information for when on in a day, when on continuously, when off continuously, so that you could say, plug something like your gaming console into the outlet module, say you only get 2 hours today to play that, and then once it reaches that threshold,
Throws the power.
yeah, you could do something like that, or maybe, you know, you just have it send an email or text message to you to say, hey, you know, game time is up, something like that. So I believe that the software feature is there, that it should be able to be taken advantage of, but he was not confident on if the hardware was effectively tracking.
There's other options at the room too. You know, you can do when audio or video changes. There's a lot of stuff you can do at the room. well, the reason I brought up those contact sensors, you have to modify this screen and say you're using one. You say one of these contact sensors. What happens when you click on connections on the outlet, you need to be able to see the TV as a possible binder.
Oh, and that's done.
And it's done by simply making that check here. Then the TV will show up as something you can connect the outlet to. Okay? So we're not doing that here. We're just going to say, go ahead and set a toggle. Then down here, this is relevant. It says, well, how long after power has been issued should we delay subsequent IR commands? Right? Maybe this is your idea of a macro to get your settings all automated so that the homeowner doesn't have to know anything. Aspect ratio, whatever else you're telling the device. You go ahead and delay it right here in the driver. Then you don't have to worry about creating that macro. Okay, so you say, all right, they'll automatically queue up, but they won't actually ping the device until it's gone through enough of a boot cycle to where it can actually start to handle it. Okay? So I just put 8 seconds here. I think that's right on you, Sony. And then we click next. We finally get to the codes. Now if we look at the remote, once again, we don't have all the codes that are in this template or this proxy. Remember, this TV driver is a fairly generic proxy that we're using, and it's not exactly what we need. So what do we do here? Well, we just uncheck the things we don't have. So these first, all the way through cancel, we don't have those on this remote. And then we can scroll down here. We don't have a PIP, although we do have this wide button. We could say aspect ratio, and we'll map to that, right? Everything else will go ahead and leave. Now, if you add something, like let me just show you one that I know is in here, the number plus 100. I type number, and now I see number plus 100. If I add this and say, okay, it's already in the proxy, in the template, so it puts it over on this left column and checks it. But if I add one, like it's on the remote, everybody see next to the channel key, the jump feature? Let's go ahead and add jump, J-U-M-P. And then we'd say, okay, well it didn't have it based on that word. And so it stuck it over here to this custom command. Now what's the difference, class, between these two columns?
System's gonna know what to do with the default one.
The system's going to know exactly what to do with the default ones. Very good. So all of the ones on the left are going to find their way automatically onto the Control4 remote. You're still going to be able to capture the command over here, jump, right? You'll get to a point where it'll say, what's the command? You start pressing the jump button on the remote, right?
Wouldn't the recall button possibly be the same?
Yeah, you could map it to recall.
Once
like I
recall's
said.
in there.
Yeah. There's, like I said, you can either map those two to the same function when you get to them, right? But I'm just showing you an example where you may have these custom, and then what you have to do afterwards, either create a custom button, or you have to then map that code to another. Remember how to do that? Yesterday we did the pound sign. At the room, you can find all the commands on the remote. And you can say, okay, so when pound is received, execute jump. So there are some things you can do to get around these custom commands. Now I click next here. It finally takes me to the actual code. And so here's what I do, class. The primary controller is listed. See the drop down? If you have multiple controllers in the project, make sure you're pointing to the right one. See how it says secondary here? I'm going to switch that. And I'm going to go to our AC800 main. And then I just hold the remote to the left of the link light, approximately 1.5 inches. Everybody see it on your rack? About 1.5 inches from the link light, I start pressing the channel down. It starts showing me the capture window, shows me it's communicating, and look at the dialog. It says, hey, I found the frequency, continue to press the button. So what you do, and by the way, you guys over by the window may not be having as much success. Let me, it's a good example that sunlight and fluorescent lights can definitely interfere with this process. Okay, so. Anyway, what did I capture? You push and release the button like you're normally pushing it. Push, let go. Push, let go. And the dialog will say, I found the frequency. Once you find a frequency, the subsequent codes start really capturing quickly. Watch this. Right, so you can go here and it already found the frequency, so see how fast it just captured the second one? And then the down button, same idea. See how fast that's gonna capture?
Which button are you?
I was putting down on the remote, so channel down here, right? And then that's channel down, and then it will move to the channel. Now, you don't have to capture all these, and I do not want you to use this driver. Use the one that's in the database for your TV. But you get the idea. What did it capture? I just moved back here on the red X. See the little red check? This says it captured, and this is what it captured. Now, how would I test that?
You got it.
Yeah, you hit the little emit button, and all the RR buds that are connected to the controllers throughout the whole project will emit. And you can watch the device respond. Right? You can also enable pass-through while you're capturing if you want to. But that's a little harder to do. I've done both.
Can we just cut and paste our hex codes right into that?
You can. So I come here to an edit window like this, and if you have the codes, so let me go, because I can take you there. I'm going to go to Remote Central. I just go to a favorite here to our infrared code database. And so we come up here, I have the Sony codes. Come down here to Sony. And then I'll go to page 4. We've got the generic TV. And then I'll scroll down here to, there's my channel down, right? So I copy it to the clipboard, and now when I go back into the editor, I can paste here. Well, let me allow this, and then paste, right mouse click, to paste, and put the codes right in. If you have, well, I can adjust the repeat count as well, test it, make sure it works right. If you have the alternate code, this is an RC5, RC6 standard. Some devices use an alternate code to determine, like, whether that's a 1 or 11, you just sent me. Marantz uses them. There's several other popular vendors that use alternate codes. When you're capturing, you'll see the alternate code appear. But if you're going to edit them manually like this, you have to get the alternate code as well and get it in the alternate code with them. Okay, this device does not use it. And then you just, you adjust the repeat count, and then emit again. Make sure it works, okay? Why, is it important to test, class?
Yes.
Why are you even doing this if you're not testing each one? Because you're gonna leave the property and expect the customer to have success with this, so make sure they work. Okay? Now, as I mentioned with the windows, hopefully, William, you and Emerson got better response when I closed the blinds there, because the sun was shining right through it. In the real world, class, this is really an issue. I've seen it with just a fluorescent light on a rack. Okay? So, make it dark and do your captures. IR is a very forgiving technology. If you want to know all about infrared communication, there's one of our engineers did an hour-long, again, very big cure for insomnia, but an hour-long YouTube on infrared. Much more than you ever want to know about it. But it's kind of cool to at least see how infrared works. Okay? Now, I'm not going to do all the codes, fair enough? You guys can do as many as you want, but I'm going to go down here to the next button and move forward in the dialogue. This is creating our inputs. What does this TV have on it? Well, we're going to add at least a video in, right? So this is going to be at this section of the wizard, we're going to call it a line level input. And we say, okay, we'll be able to define this in just a minute. And then I can add maybe a cable. Right, and this would be the RF antenna, right? This is a coax that we're saying the TV has. Okay, so I've got this line in and I've got a coax on here, just as an example. Now we click next, and it says to me, what is that RF antenna? What is that cable input? I could say, look, it's DirecTV, it's the dish satellite, or it's a generic cable TV, right? And then I click next. And because on mine, class, I said to it that I have discrete inputs, you remember me clicking that check and told you
Yeah.
not to do it? It's now saying, okay, you told me you have discrete inputs, tell me which code takes me to the cable.
That's good.
Does that make sense? But I don't really have that, so I gotta create a macro. And then it says, all right, I'll let you create a macro in a minute, but tell me about your video in. Well, it's HDMI, right? The HDMI in on the TV. I don't have to worry about an audio definition. Why? Because it's all assumed if you choose HDMI. Okay? And then I click next. And it says, well, how do you get to the video input? Again, if I had a discrete code, I would just choose it. But I don't have a discrete code. What do? Well, I could create a macro as well. Now let's talk about that, because as I progress along here, it's taking